Hello, fans. This is Magic, and this is the brand new This, That, and the Other uh, version of the podcast. We're no longer doing the podcast. We're actually going to the video format, and this will allow for a live, real-time interaction with the Gridiron Dynasty community in future episodes. Today's episode is what we call a closed episode. It's going to be the initial one, and it's presented to you with our very first guest. And this guest has been involved with the Gridiron Dynasty longer than all of us. You know, as for the podcast listeners, I always like to mention how long somebody's been a member, what their record is, how many national championships, etc. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Tarek Kamil, welcome to the show, sir.
Do you want me to call you Mike or Magic?
Mike, Magic, either one, whatever slips out works.
Because, you know, there's the whole, what is it, Magic Mike?
Magic Mike.
Yeah, I don't want to go there. So I think I'll just
keep my hat on.
I'll stay with Magic.
That'll work. But again, welcome to the show. Yeah. I know that a lot of people out there are really interested in what you have to say, and we'll probably do that in the later episode. But for the most part today, just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, how you got involved with the What If Sports, and what you're doing now.
That's a lot of questions all at once. You just jumped on me. Okay, so let's see. I grew up loving sports and math and technology, and I started writing software when I was around the age of 12, and I was fascinated with simulating sports. So this started around age 13 or 14, and it was just something I was fascinated with as a kid, you know, super nerdy kid, whatever, and then put it on the shelf and went to college to study medicine and decided I didn't want to do that, and ended up getting into my real love, which was technology. And so I started a company, I guess this was 97. We were building custom software for big companies. And when you're doing that, you've got downtime, right? You're really busy with a project, and then you're waiting for the next project to start. And I had the idea of, because now the internet's starting to take off, and I thought, I wonder if there's an opportunity to kind of bring all these things together that have woven threads in my life around sports, technology, internet now. And so that's where What If Sports started. This was probably the end of 99, and launched it in February of 2000, which is crazy. That was 20 years ago.
Yes.
And it was never intended to be a business. So it was really just, I wonder if there are other people that are fascinated with the math and the science of sports like I am, and put this thing out there. And I think the first iteration of it, if I remember right, was go online and you pick 2 college basketball teams, and they were real teams, and you would just pick, and then you click a button and it would do all the math and say, here's who we think would win, and here are the stats for that game. And so that's how it started. And then it evolved clearly to kind of what you see today. So there was a lot of stuff in the middle, but that's kind of the background of how it all began.
What was the thing that really proved to you that this was a platform that you had developed that could realistically become very popular? Was there that one aha moment when you realized we're onto something here?
It was interesting because, you know, we're in Cincinnati. And so this, again, wasn't intended to be a business. It was just something I thought was interesting. And we launched in February. And if you remember back to that year, it was an interesting time because the University of Cincinnati was ranked #1 in the country in college basketball. And here we are in the hotbed of that. We're in the middle of Kentucky, UC, Michigan State, Indiana. All these schools are all around us, and UC is ranked #1. and Kenyon Martin breaks his leg in
Yes.
the tournament, in the conference tournament. And so it raised all these questions around what would happen if UC would have played Michigan State, who won the national championship that year, and if Kenyon Martin was healthy, who would have won? And so the media started reaching out and saying, can you tell us what would have happened? Especially the Cincinnati media. They really wanted to know, would we have won? And I can relate to that. You know, it's 20 years later, and now we had March Madness canceled. And as a Dayton fan, although I'm wearing a Miami shirt, as a Dayton fan, where I thought we were going to be a #1 seed, we were #3 in the country, and to never know what would have happened this year is devastating. So I understood that there was a passion to understand what would happen. And one of the things that I started to realize as this thing got a little bit bigger is that I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person that found this stuff fascinating. And people started to hit the site, and we went from basically 0 people on the site. It was me, and then a couple guys in the office, and then it just started to grow really quickly. And people started asking questions. Hey, could you do this? Could you do that? What if I could mix and match players from different eras? Like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And so I think when people actually meet me, they're so disappointed because they think I'm going to be this super smart guy, and I'm not. I just listen to people, and I said, that's a really great idea. And then we make it happen. So we got into this habit of listening to people as suggestions came in. And I told you on our call yesterday, I read every single email that came in for the entire time I was there. I was there from 2000, and then I left in January of 2009. I would read every single email that came in, which included death threats. People got into it. So that was always weird. But
you know you've made it when you get those.
What's that?
You know you've made it when you start getting those.
Well, I don't want to make it if that's what the definition of making it is. But a lot of it was just good ideas. And so that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And it was a constant, I want to improve. I want to get better every day. It was never about making money. It was never intended to be a business. It was just, I love this. I think about it all the time. All the guys in the office thought about it all the time. And how can we make this thing better and better and better? So that's when I started to realize I wasn't alone. And then when the media came and started asking us what would happen if, it really started to take off.
Now you're talking about your team that helped develop this and take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Was that a 2 or 3 man team? Or are we talking a 500-man team? I'm guessing it was probably more just a bunch of close friends.
In the beginning, it was, like I said, it wasn't intended. It was just a side project. It wasn't intended to be a business. And I was already running a business, a software business. And so basically I started to pull people over to work on this when they were between projects. In the beginning, it was just me.
Right.
So in the beginning, I wrote all of it, and then started to pull people in when they were between projects, because WhatIfSports we weren't selling advertising. We weren't charging anyone anything. So it was just, hey, there's something cool for you to work on. And then eventually it started to get so much traction, I started to shy away from this other business and really focus solely on What If. And the moment that I had to commit to this decision was when Major League Baseball reached out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had just started charging maybe for games. So this might've been 2001. And Major League Baseball reaches out, and can I cuss on your show?
Absolutely.
All right. So I get a voicemail from Major League Baseball. Like, hey, this is Alexander Pigeon was his name. Mm-hmm. I still remember. And I want to talk to you. And I'm terrified to return this guy's voicemail because I'm assuming he's an attorney and we're going to get a cease and desist.
Oh, some kind of infringement.
Right. And
sure,
that would be, I think, what most people would assume. So I don't want to return his call. And it was like George Costanza, where the girl wants to break up with him and he won't answer the phone. That's what I felt like I was doing. So eventually, this is 2 weeks later, I finally call him back. All right, give me the bad news. I can't avoid this forever. And he says, hey, we noticed what you got going on with What If Sports and baseball, and all the guys in the New York office are playing your game. We'd love to talk to you about working together. Like, oh, okay. Because it was still, this is nothing, right? This is just a side thing, just fun. So I go to New York and I meet with Major League Baseball, and we agree to terms where they want to run these games on MLB.com, which I find hilarious that this thing was just this pet project, and now here we are on MLB.com. The part that a lot of people don't know to this story is that back in the day, all these computers were like, you had to stand them up yourself. It's not like today with cloud computing and you can just go to Amazon. These were servers literally running in our office. And What If Sports was, I think at that time, running on 2 like refurbished desktop computers. They weren't anything. It was just a fun project. And so Major League Baseball comes and we work deal terms out. And then they turn to me and they say, now that we figured out how we want to work together, I need you to talk to our IT folks because they're going to stress test your environment to make sure they can handle all of our traffic.
Oh, sure.
Right. So in my mind, I hear that and I'm like, fuck, we're fucked.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Because we're paying nothing for this, basically. We're just using our office internet for this. And these guys are going to figure that out quick. So it was at that point where I have to make this decision. Do you want to spend $12,000 a month to manage all this hardware? Because it wasn't like it is today. Today, it's relatively inexpensive. Back then, it was $12,000 a month.
Man.
So from 0 to 12,000 to be able to support them. So you're looking at $150,000 a year. And the way I think, I kind of started this conversation with, I went to school to study medicine and I hated it. I'm not fascinated by it. I don't like the sight of blood. This was not going to be good for me. So I learned early that you don't want to have any regrets. And I knew standing there in front of them that if I said no to this, like I was afraid to take that chance to spend the $12,000 a month, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Like, what is the worst case that happened? We fail, I tried, but at least I tried.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, let's go. So I'm like, yes, stress test our stuff. And so I fly back to Cincinnati and we start standing up all this stuff. And we're probably working for 48 hours straight to get everything ready for them. Because they think this is all ready to go. This is like startup stories, like, oh my God, somebody really wants what you're selling, and now you have to be able to produce it. And so it's about 48 hours in a row of living in the office, getting this environment stood up so MLB could stress test our environment. And we did it in 2 days, and they tested us and we passed. And that started the whole thing. Now, when MLB came on board, things changed. I mean, for the better. Because we were legit, right? You're working with Major League Baseball. So when I call the NBA, when I call the NHL, when I call ESPN, or they call me, they already got it, right? MLB is working with you, so they felt like we were real.
Exactly, yeah.
So things went a lot faster after we did that deal with Major League Baseball. I think it was 2001, and then things really accelerated from there. But to answer your question, which I didn't even do. I didn't even answer your question. I think at the time I left, it was probably, 15 or 20 people. We were about 15 or 20 people the whole time. Basically, I just took everyone that was working on the software business and kept moving them over to the What If Sports side. And then eventually got rid of the software business altogether because What If Sports was where my passion was.
Now, what was your team's reaction when you came back from that MLB meeting and you had a team meeting and you said, here's what we got, and here's where we are, and here's where we're supposed to be.
Everybody's excited. I think they liked this. Obviously, they're all sports fans, or most of them were sports fans, and they were all baseball fans. So the idea of actually working with Major League Baseball was a big deal. And so everyone was supportive, everyone was excited. And eventually we started wrapping up projects that they were working on. And when they were wrapped up, I didn't want any new business. I wanted them to come over and work full time on What If. So in the beginning, I was running two businesses for probably a span of 2 or 3 years, where I'm running What If and running the software business, and then eventually get rid of the software business and just focused on What If, and then brought everybody with me.
Well, let's fast forward to when you make the decision to disconnect from What If and
Yes.
venture out and do other things. What time frame was that from the initial development to all the way through where you are now?
So I think I wrote the first line of code for What If in November or December of '99. So that's when it originally started, and then I launched it officially, website up, February 28th of 2000. So I worked on it for probably 3 months by myself, just working through all the algorithms, getting the website stood up, database, all that stuff. And then launched this initial version in February of 2000. And then we ended up getting acquired in September of 2005. And I think at that time we had 500,000 users, or 500,000 people that have registered. So I don't know how many were active at any one time, maybe 30,000 people playing games. But overall, we gotten 500,000 people to register, and we didn't do any marketing. It was just kind of relationships, and one friend tells another friend. And so part of the buyout was I had to work for Fox for 3 years. So that basically took me through the end of 2008. And at that time, they asked if I wanted to renew my contract, and I said no. You know, that's a whole separate conversation of what happened with Fox, which we could get into at any time. But so then I ended up leaving around January of '09. So it was,
what are you doing?
I guess, 9 years total, roughly.
So what is it that you're doing today?
So today, it's not sports related, but it's a similar story where I saw an issue. I was on my children's school board here in Cincinnati. And I saw an issue with people being disengaged with what we were doing as a school district. And the way my mind works, I just like to solve problems. It is never to make money. It is just solving problems. I love solving problems. And so I noticed this problem. I love education. And so I started building this thing. It was just like the start of What If. It was nights and weekends, just a pet project to improve how our school communicated to our parents and our alumni and our community. And my goal was I wanted to create something that would allow a school district to communicate to their audience in the same way Netflix already communicates to them, or Amazon, where everything is tailored to you. Everything about you they know, and everything's tailored, and no matter where you go, they're not wasting your time. And I thought if we could get there, then people would be more engaged with what we're doing as a school district, because everything's tailored to the recipient versus how schools normally communicate. They send the same thing to everybody, right? They're going to tell me what's going on with the band, even though my kids weren't in band, right? Why are you telling me that? I don't have time for this. And so that's where it started. And again, it wasn't intended to be a business. And what that has morphed into is kind of changing now how companies communicate with employees. So big companies and how they communicate to employees, and why isn't everything tailored to the employee? And why are you sending me things that aren't relevant to me? Why are you sending me things that I've already seen or I've already done? It's a waste of people's time. So we're really thinking through how do we change how, in general, people communicate, but specifically how big companies communicate to their employees. So that's what I'm doing today.
Well, that is awesome. Tarek, I really, truly, honestly hate to end this because we could chat for hours. But as a teaser episode, I think we've got enough here to whet the appetite of the What If Sports players out there. And what we're going to do is let them know on the message board that you'll be fielding questions in an upcoming episode, and for them to go ahead and formulate those questions now and get ready, because the next time you're on with us, we'll open up to guests and actually have them visible so they can personally one-on-one ask you their directions.
Yeah, ask anything. Happy to talk about it.
You know, where do you want them to go? Do you want them to keep playing? Those kind of directions. And, you know, basically keeping their faith in What If Sports and making sure that they know that you are real. It wasn't just something that was created out of the blue. And, you know, that this is a tremendous concept, this whole premise of What If Sports. And I like where it's gone. And I know that the players that are out there today that have stuck through the thick and thin, which we can get into later on, that are still with us, hopefully we'll be able to drum up some more interest. And I'm hoping that's what some of these videos do as well, is drum up the interest to get more players, because quite honestly, the more humans you have engaged, the more fun it is. And I enjoy it. I thank you for developing it, for making it what it is. And I enjoy the fact that you're giving of yourself to be with us. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Any parting words?
Yeah, I guess I would say that, you know, What If Sports is like having a child. So just because I'm not there, or I don't, it's like your child gets married,
Mm-hmm.
it's still your child.
Sure.
And I'll always care about What If Sports, and I always want it to be successful. And that's why I am always flattered when someone reaches out and says, "Hey, will you talk about What If?" I'm like, "Of course I will. I want it to be great. It's my child. It will never not be my child." So anything I can do to help, any questions that people have, other than, and I think Daryl asked me this on Twitter, do I have any inside tips on how he can win games? No, I do not have any inside tips on how you can win games.
You just lost half the questions right there.
It's going to be a short episode then. That's fine.
It will. Again, thanks so much for joining us. And for those fans of this, that, and the other, stay tuned to that message board, because that's where the information and the link will be for our live interaction with Tarek later on.